Okay, we are back again at BarCampGNV, sponsored by startGNV. And we have one of the speakers from today who went up on stage earlier. Her name is Laila Fakhoury. Did I pronounce that okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
She has fabulous earrings on today, and so I'm going to be very distracted by that. But why don't you tell us first a little bit about yourself and what your company? You have a couple of companies, I think, that
Yeah.
you're working on right now.
My name is Laila, as you mentioned. I'm a creative entrepreneur here in town. I have two main businesses. One of them is called Dion, which is an independent record label, mostly hip hop and R&B based. And then I also have a clothing store, brand, creative and cultural hub venue in the middle of downtown called Bazar. And I also do freelance work where I get contracted to host events and do social media consultation and marketing consultation for other businesses, organizations, nonprofits around Gainesville.
Awesome. Well, we are fellow marketeers, so that we do have that. You are a busy person.
You could say that. You could say that.
What? So let's start with the record label. What prompted that? How did you get into it? Are you a musician yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing music. I grew up playing piano, but I've always had a really deep passion and love for music. My dad is actually who got me into music. He himself has been just a big fan of classic R&B and rock and all different types of music ever since he moved to the U.S. As a young person. It's something that helped him like integrate into the culture and the language and everything
Where
like
did he
that.
move from?
From Kuwait.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, but he's originally Palestinian and Lebanese.
Okay.
And so I just have always had a love for music. And when I was at the University of Florida in 2018, I met two friends named Jarhi and Kari, who are brothers. And when we met, we realized that we all had backgrounds in social work and community work, activism. And so for them, they had a very interesting upbringing where their social work came from their parents who had something called the Access Center, which was a nonprofit that offered internet access to rural Black communities in North and Central Florida. So they had like internet cafes in Archer and Bronson and Trenton, all of these rural communities. And it being a family business, Jarhi and Kari were forced to do everything.
Yes.
So they had to learn how to do design and photography and videography, and they were definitely like children of the internet, of the computer. And so that's where their design and creative minds came from. And then for me personally, being Palestinian, I learned from a very young age that community is everything. And your goal should always be to work to uplift others, your neighbors, your friends, your family. And so that's where my social work mindset came from. But I've always been interested in things like events and curation from a young age. Even I used events as a form of activism when I was younger. So when I was in sixth grade, I hosted my first event in Ocala, where I was living, and it was a film screening at the College of a Palestinian film.
And
So
this was in sixth grade, and
yeah,
you hosted this event.
yeah.
So you come from a family who has that sort of social background. You said,
Yeah.
how did but having that and having that desire, and then being able to host an event. Where did that come from, or how did you learn how to do that?
That's a great question. I mean, it's something that I didn't even think about that event until very recently. I started reflecting on that because I tried to just start like retracing my creativity and like my interest in events. And it was something I feel like it was just something that I had experienced watching that movie and then thought that how great it would be if I watched it with other people.
Okay.
And from there, like I started to think about I mean, well, not in like this sophisticated of a way, but like when I was younger, I just thought about how fun it was to have people around you like during these types of experiences,
Right.
and like how they can bring people together with movie nights and with like other spaces that you create with other people to come together and experience things together. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how I like
You're an
did it
entrepreneur at
then,
heart, I
but
think.
yeah.
That's
And
kind of
also I have really amazing parents that are entrepreneurs themselves,
okay.
that I definitely looked to for inspiration, and have just like learned a lot of lessons through them, just through observation alone, of seeing how they lead their lives and what they do in order to build community and for activism and for
And do they live
work.
in Gainesville or do
They
they live in
Ocala.
Okay,
Mhm.
in Ocala. So the community aspect, I'm really curious about that. And you talked about the Palestinian sort of emphasis around this.
Mhm.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we learned that community is everything. It's all you have, and so it's, you know, of course, like a very different lifestyle and culture over there, where it is very communal based. It is all about like your neighbors and your family and getting to know who is around you. Like you're constantly going to weddings with the entire village or city that you live in. Like you're constantly moving to moving around to other villages, other cities, to meet new people and to visit people that you know in other places. I learned really what community was when I was over there in Palestine, because for example, like I would travel to Jerusalem, which would be like 2 hours away from where my family was staying. And while I was there, I would be by myself and I wouldn't have any plans for what I was going to eat or where I was going to stay, because when you go, like you just meet so many people that are, it's just like, yeah, it's just so
That's
communal
awesome.
where they're like, here, eat this.
Yeah.
You want to like come and eat dinner at my house? Oh, you might as well just stay. Like, feel free to stay. Like, we even have a phrase whenever you see someone, like when you walk into a shop or when you see someone on the street, we say in Arabic, ahlan wa sahlan, which means you're always welcome.
Okay.
So like it's all about like community and coming together, and that's really what's just driven that passion for me.
So I had a conversation earlier with the former mayor, Lauren Poe,
Mhm.
and his new, now that he's no longer mayor, his
Mhm.
new thing is, or his new business is about welcoming international community here. So there's a little bit of a theme.
Mhm.
What has been your experience in Gainesville in terms of international communities here?
That's a great question. I mean, I was lucky to go to the University of Florida, so it's just such a international place where there's students coming from all over, there's faculty from all over. So I was able to really, you know, just be around so many different cultures and ideas while I was at the university. But I was also doing a lot of experiential work outside of UF, and I was I think I like a lot sooner than some people when they come to Gainesville. I got involved in like the Gainesville community a lot quicker. And with that, I was working in nonprofits that were very international based. Like I was working at the River Phoenix Center for Peace Building. And so then they were bringing like delegates from overseas very regularly. So I was able to learn from people like basically throughout my entire time in Gainesville who do have international backgrounds. And for me personally, I believe that I have an international background as well, to where I can kind of pull off of that experience. And it makes me a lot more open to you know, learning more and seeing how we can like affect our international community and welcome them into Gainesville. Even like with our store, How Bazar, we use it to hold a lot of international products. So during COVID, we started holding or we started selling masks that were embroidered by Jordanian or Palestinian refugees in Jordan.
Oh, wow.
And so there were women that were using fabrics from like a dress factory near the refugee camp, and they were making these beautiful handmade embroidered masks and also olive oil soaps and things like that. And so we would ship them all the way from over there, and we had them in Gainesville. And so people were walking around Gainesville wearing these masks that were made by refugee women in Jordan, which was so beautiful. And I'm actually on the board for the Greater Gainesville International Center with Lauren Poe. So I definitely like love what he's doing, and I'm learning so much more every day on like how we can actually be a better community for the international community.
That's awesome. Tell us a little more about it's called How Bazar, that piece of your life. It happens on a regular basis. Like, how is it structured? What does that look like?
So I know when we first started this podcast, I gave it like 5 phrases or 5 catchwords, but basically, we're a physical space in the middle of downtown in the Southwest parking garage down there. But we're also a brand. So we started with vintage clothing as a means to build some selling vintage clothing as a means to build some capital so that we could create our own clothing line or our own brand.
Okay.
And the goal was to work with local artists, seamstress, embroiderers, and pay them over living wage, especially during COVID when we got started, to execute these designs with us. So we've been working on our own clothing line, our own clothing brand to push out, and there's a lot of messaging behind the brand as well. But because it is a physical space, we use it as a venue to where we host our own events, we host other people's events.
Okay.
Even tonight, we have our bi-monthly night market that we do, where we're in the middle of downtown, all the way in the streets with about 100 vendors and food trucks and DJs. But yeah, How Bazar is interesting because it's a worker-owned organization, which means that everyone that works there owns it. Everyone that owns it works there. There's 5 of us that co-own it, and we all have complete equal ownership, make decisions together. So it's really the first of its kind in Gainesville. There's other.
It'd be considered like a co-op.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's definitely others in Gainesville that are like within that business model, but I think we are the only ones right now that have like that full split of ownership, like the true essence of worker owned.
Okay. And your outfit, is that from your business?
This is from a friend. A friend gifted me this recently, but these earrings that you mentioned earlier, they're from a local vendor and creator named Valeria. Her brand is called Flores de Miel, or honey flowers, and so she preserves flowers and leaves and all of these really beautiful things. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit that. And she's actually one of the people that's vending at the market, and she does consignment inside of the shop, so she can basically use it as her own storefront of having her own items in there, her own products.
And does she have an online presence as well?
Yes, she does.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
And she just updated her website too, so it's a perfect time to look.
Awesome. I will be definitely checking that out. So you spoke this morning. What did you talk about? What was your topic?
So I talked about using events and experiences as a way to build community.
Okay.
And I basically, exactly. And it's all I talk about. I basically explained our story with How Bazar and Dion and how with both of them, the goal is really to be a part of this cultural movement and paradigm shift that's happening in Gainesville right now. And I also spoke about the music festival that we're hosting on April 15th, which is our premier music festival, the first one we're ever doing.
And that'll be in Gainesville as well?
It'll be in Gainesville, yeah, at a place called Celebrations Warehouse. So off 39th and Main, kind of in the industrial area by the car dealerships. It's circus themed, but think circus meets street culture. So imagine stilt walkers walking around with Florida streetwear, or streetwear by Florida designers, a stage with hip hop music coming from it, but it's designed like a vintage circus tent. And it's the first of its kind in Gainesville because there hasn't been a hip hop music festival here before. So
really,
yeah,
that surprises me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And do you curate the musicians? Or is there more than one musician playing? Or
there's 15 musical artists that are performing, but there's a lot of community involved in it. So like I said, there's going to be musicians. We have a headliner coming from Atlanta named Zach Fox, who's growing really quickly in the hip hop world. We have artists from throughout Florida, even local artists that are going to be performing on the main stage. But we also have circus performers that are going to be there. We have like fire breathers and stilt walkers, aerialists, contortionist mimes, all these things. We have people who are modeling and designing. So we have a fashion show that's going to include 90 models and 14 different Florida-based designers. And yeah, there's just a lot of people, a lot of areas of culture.
This is your idea, or did you?
Yeah, I mean, me and my two partners on the record label, Jahi and Kari, this is something that we've been like conceptualizing for a really long time, along with the other members of the label. It's been basically the vision from the beginning is that we knew we wanted to start doing these events, and they've all kind of just been leading up to the epitome of like large scale events, which is the music festival.
So you're bringing together the circus,
Yeah.
hip hop, and fashion.
Yes, and there's also going to be the automotive culture included. So there'll be a car show, there'll be art installations.
Wow.
There's going to be a lot of different types of production. There's other vendors, and
How do people find out about this event?
through our website. So our website is diondia.com, DIONDIA, and then you can slash for the big show. It's called the big show because
makes
it
sense.
really is like a show. The whole thing is basically like I wrote a hip hop musical where everything is intentional from minute one to the end, where artists are calling each other up on the stage, and there's like a moment where everyone turns their heads and the fashion show starts, and so everything is going to be kind of like this subtle, guided experience.
Okay. And do you think the audience will mostly be students? Who do you think will mostly?
I think it's going to be extremely diverse, especially because the performances are all from very like cross-generational, like very diverse sounds. At first it was going to be solely hip-hop music, but then that started to feel limiting, and the whole goal of it was for it to be a space for everyone to enjoy, just like everything that we do. So once I like opened it up to that, we just have so many different genres and ages and groups that are going to be represented. So I think that everyone is going to find like something for them there. Even I was here at BarCamp today, and there's like people that are on the board of startGNV that are like, we're definitely going to be there on April 15th. And then there's high school kids that are saying we're definitely going to be there. And
I may have to come back to Gainesville for this.
I think you should.
April 15th.
April 15th, yeah.
It'll
be one of a kind experience.
I love it. So do you plan on being in Gainesville for quite some time, or what does your future look like?
So I definitely want to have my roots here in Gainesville, but for me and like the nature of what I do, I see it taking me more like basically just to travel more, where we're able to do our events specifically in other communities and other places. So for example, at the end of fall of this upcoming fall, we're going to have our first event in Miami.
Nice.
So it's going to be the same framework of what we're doing in Gainesville.
Oh, that'll go so well there. I can tell you that right now.
Thank you so much. I need to hear that. But yeah, the goal is to start like cultivating the ideas and the cultural movement that we're creating here in Gainesville in other places. Gainesville is kind of like the test grounds for it,
I love it. Okay, so all my Miami people out there, look forward to this.
Please.
If there's any connections you can make for Laila in this space, what kind of people do you need to be connected with? You have the venue space?
We have a venue space, but could always connect with more. Basically anyone that is leading cultural, artistic, any kind of movements in their community or in their city that like would want to tap in and collaborate, because for us like collaboration is everything. Like we don't like to do things alone. We like for there to be a lot of different ideas and cultures intermixed in what we're doing, especially the events. So yeah, anyone that's doing anything in there and wants to be involved or collaborate or partner, that would be ideal.
Okay, I'm gonna make some connections for you.
Thank you. And yeah, we could definitely use more venues for sure. More venue options.
Where is the venue, or can you say where it's gonna be?
Yeah, because we're very excited to actually be partnering with someone in Miami called Jolt Radio. So it's an independent radio station. They have a space right outside of Wynwood, or technically Wynwood,
like Midtown.
And it's a very beautiful like artistic space, but the people who run it are so amazing and so like very much aligned with what we're doing. So that's where we want to do more of like the underground, like similar to our block parties that we do here, where they just involve a lot of different forms of culture, like automotive and skate and fashion and art, all those things in that space. But then we also want to do things that are more in the mainstream. So for example, we would really love to start hosting markets like in the colleges, like in Miami-Dade and the colleges in downtown and stuff like that, like similar to the markets that we're doing here.
Gotcha. Very cool. You have a lot going on.
Too much, you could say. That's why this is an issue for me.
And you said you have carpal tunnel.
Carpal tunnel.
Is that from typing?
Yes. Oh. So silly. It's like such a silly injury.
To have carpal tunnel.
Like I'm too
you must type a lot.
Too much. And it's the texting. Because I do a lot of my communication through the phone.
Yeah.
Because no one answers emails. Yeah. So I have to text everyone, and it's just
And it's the laying in bed in the middle of the night texting because you're at this weird angle. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
not great.
Is there anything else that you're working on that you want to talk about, or I think you have a lot.
It's pretty much all that.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that, like I said, I have started doing more freelance work, so I'm always happy to collaborate with others and do what we're doing in other spaces. For example, like even our markets, we've worked with other businesses to bring similar concepts into their space so that our community has more room around Gainesville to like really express themselves and enjoy. So for example, we do art walks at First Magnitude, which is a brewery here in town. And it's a live art showcase. We have one coming up on April 28th. And that's been so fun because it's just like, again, spreading the ideas and spreading like the movement. But yeah, I mean, I'm just always happy to work with others. So I hope to continue to get to do that, meet new people.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you stopping by today.
Thank you. I'm honored.
And
thank you.
Congratulations.
For
I heard you did an awesome job. Although
Thank
you
you.
thought you had technical issues, I think it
So many
didn't
technical
come across that
difficulties.
way. So a lot of good things being said.
Thank you. Santa Fe is high tech. It is hard to use that projector, but I'll get used to it. Hopefully for next time.
Even the bathrooms here, you just wave your hand and the door suddenly
It's
opens
amazing.
for you.
It's amazing. We just got to adapt.
Exactly. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll be right back with our next guest in about a minute. Okay, we are back with Jillian Dinius.
Yes, ma'am.
You two had a talk here today, right?
I
Or you
did.
have one this afternoon? Or you
I
already
just did
one?
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yes.
Who are you? What do you do? And
wow, those questions are always like, how do I answer that?
yeah.
So
We can dive deep if you want.
let's go deep.
Yeah.
Okay. I am an only child
Okay.
of 2 immigrant parents.
Okay.
And I live the only child life still. My husband is very upset with that. I just had a birthday. And so it has me
Happy
reflecting
birthday.
a lot on, thank you. It has me reflecting on like, yeah, who am I? I am a creative person. I love taking risks. I'm playful. But I'm also mature. So it's so awesome because at my job right now, I work at InfoTech. I work in our people, culture, communications division. And so my day job is very people focused. And how do I support our interns? How do I support our diversity and inclusion efforts? And how do I support our leaders? And it's interesting because in my job right now, I get to be creative and I get to be playful and I get to bring this maturity to it that I think gives me a really cool opportunity with the people at InfoTech.
Yeah.
I do that.
Do you feel like you've always been mature, or is this something that you've come into?
No, to be honest, I think this past year has been very life-changing for me. And the reason for that is because the way that I view maturity is my ability to sit with an emotion. This is going to get deep, Michelle.
Yeah, I love it. We're getting deep today.
Sit with my emotion. So if I'm bored, like, why am I bored? Don't just scroll through the TikTok. Like, what are you trying to? So my ability to sit through my emotion, my ability to then process that emotion. Like, okay, I'm not really bored. I'm actually sad. Why am I sad? What happened today? And then push through that emotion.
Okay.
And that has been years of therapy, and it's interesting because maturity to me is like living an integrated life where my family knows the same version and my friends and my work people. And that came very, very later in life. I was like a chameleon, like I was different people with different audiences. And a part of that is still me. I'm a performer. I like to entertain. But the maturity piece has come in when I can like be integrated in all the areas of my life, all the spheres.
I mean, there is a balance, right?
Yes.
Between being able to fit into a situation. I moved around a lot as a child, went to a lot of different schools, and I think built that ability to be able to be the chameleon.
Yes.
But it enables you to be able to fit in and make friends and all that sort of
It's
thing.
such a skill. It is.
Yeah.
And then in my opinion, I have a light and a dark side, right? All my strengths are so strong. And if not checked, they can be hindrances to me. And the same thing, the chameleon part of me, what ended up happening was when I was left to myself, I didn't know who I was. Like, am I this like, who am I?
Yeah.
And so when I go back to the maturity piece, that has come into play in that regard.
Okay.
Like, that's all of me. And I can be this person here and this person here, but they're still true to me.
Yeah.
Which is what I talked about today. My talk here was, it was called Practicing Imperfection to Cultivate Creativity.
Okay.
And it was all about being comfortable with risk and how you can practice little things. You can practice being imperfect. You can practice the feeling comfortable with like, the uncertainty so that you can do the big risk taking of pitching that idea to your boss, wearing the outfit you always want to wear.
Yep.
So that has been a key theme in my life, just like being comfortable with not being perfect.
Yeah. And so what made you think about doing that for this event today? And by the way, sorry, I don't know if I said this at the beginning, but we are at BarCampGNV, which is an unconference. So, and you sign your name up on the board.
I was kind of planning. I was like, maybe, but I didn't show up on time. Like I wasn't like, let me make sure I get my name on the board. And I wanted to give that talk because it has really been transformative for me personally. And every time I talk about it, I get that much stronger in that topic and in that personal application for myself. And it's really important to me that people who do not think of themselves as creative, one, recognize that they are, because creativity really is just risk taking. It's not artistic ability. It is putting together a meal with what you got in the pantry. It's doing a podcast and going with the flow and create. We are all creative. So because my hair is like this and like I have this like creative vibe, I think people look at me and they're like, oh, it's easy for you.
Yeah.
Like it's not. Risk taking is so hard. So I wanted to give that talk because I want people to, one, recognize that they're creative.
Yeah.
Two, recognize that if creativity is risk taking, it's uncomfortable. Creativity is uncomfortable 1000%.
Yep.
Creativity and perfection are arch nemesis. They don't go together well. But you can practice being imperfect and strengthen that creative muscle in a way that you do it small now. And then when your kid moves away to go to college, you can deal with that risk in a way that you didn't think you could.
Yeah.
So that's why
it's interesting because I think how risk is defined by different people is completely different.
Yes.
Like your risk, something that would be risky for you may not be something, and vice versa.
Yes.
I've once had a friend say, "Oh, you're so brave," or something, because I was traveling somewhere around the world. But for me, that wasn't a risk.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't feeling the risk of that.
Right.
But for her, that was
a big, huge risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is a spectrum of things, and that's why I told people, I said, I'm giving this talk, and it is easier for me to hear the concept of like risk. I like risk take. I do. It's not something that I have grown. I used to hate failure. Oh my gosh, with a passion. I'm an only child. All the attention was always on me. And it got to a point where I was so terrified of failing that I talked about being different people and different. I was just like, it's too much risk to be fully myself. Like, and I realized I was just missing out on so much life. And this is the year actually that I'm like, I'm just going to do it, So
whatever. What made you say this year? Like, why?
It's a great question. It was a series of things. But a lot of it came from people have been repeating the same things to me, the same qualities that they see in me. Like, Jillian, when you talk, I listen. Like, you engage me. You're so like they would say these things. And again, I'm not saying that to like pat myself on the back, but
and you should pat yourself.
Thank you, Michelle. They would say these things and they'd be like, you should have a podcast. Like, what do you like? Can you come speak? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I would love to. And towards the end of last year, I was like, what am I like? I'm just going to do it. Yeah. There's nothing special about 2023. There's nothing special about this birthday, but I've just come to grips with, I want to live a full life.
Right.
And there's so much risk involved with that. But I've reached a place in my life where I'm like, I have the privilege of having a safe home and having a stable job. I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And, I think about my parents, right, who they moved from different countries and their parents worked jobs that maybe that wasn't their dream. Maybe they could never do what they really wanted to do. But the risk they took was, I'm going to possibly not. My grandpa, he owned a gas station in Jamaica, but he is a performer. He writes poems, he writes plays, and he kind of like put that on the side. He did the risk of putting that away so that he could support his family. And so I just, when you say, risk taking is different for everyone, it really is. And for whatever that big risk is, like for your friend, if she was like, I want to take that trip one day, you can, but like, how do you feel right now if you have incorrect change at the grocery store? Like that risk of like, people are going to think I'm dumb or you have a stain on you, things like that. Those are the little things that I've done in the past to kind of get comfortable with being imperfect.
So what is the future? What is the rest of this year for you?
Are you doing
a podcast?
I'm launching a podcast.
Oh, fun. What's it called?
We're crowdsourcing names.
Okay.
So I had a birthday event last night and kind of shared the origin story with some of my closest friends and family. My dad is actually the first guest on my podcast, and we recorded some of it live there.
Oh, nice.
And then afterwards, I was asking people like, what do you think a name or a word? So I don't know yet, but the whole premise of the podcast is going to be the power of authenticity. Authenticity is such a cliche word sometimes, but it's you listening into a 20-30 minute episode of people taking risks, taking the risk of being themselves, whether that's in their job, whether that's with their relationship. So the topics are going to be broad, but my hope is that the people who listen to it are going to be like inspired to
no, that's
take
awesome.
a risk and be themselves.
Good
So
for you.
that's what's happening now. Even things like this, like giving talks. I would love to do that more. So I'm hoping that I get a lot more opportunities to do that.
Okay, well, if
And this is
anybody
an
has
awesome opportunity. Hit me up, Jillian Dinius.
They can find you on LinkedIn.
They can. Yep.
Okay,
Jillian
awesome.
Dinius.
Well, I appreciate you
Thank
coming
you,
here
Michelle.
and being your authentic self.
Thank
and
you.
yeah, I hope we can remain connected.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. So we are here in Gainesville, Florida, at the Santa Fe Community College campus. There is a bar camp going on here today. It's called BarCampGNV. It's being hosted by an organization called startGNV. And we're just waiting on our last interview for this session. It's going to be with Mike Amish, and Mark Amish, and they are looking for him as we speak. So he should be here any minute. So looking forward to having the conversation. Okay, we have Mike Amish.
Right.
I keep pronouncing your name Amish, and it's not Amish.
It's
I'm from
not
Pennsylvania.
Well, I know, and so are we. So,
Oh, really? What part?
well, back down, down the line a bit.
Okay.
Lancaster County.
Okay.
Yeah. Gosh, you put me on the spot.
That's okay.
Where they're from? But yes, Dutch, German,
Yeah.
from Pennsylvania.
And you now live in Gainesville?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do
My
in
story?
Gainesville? Yeah.
I've been here since the late '90s. Came here to play music.
Interesting. What do you play?
Play guitar and piano and sing, and then sort of just settled down here. So most people come here for college,
Right?
No, this was post college, and through a series of different kind of jobs working in community training and community development. Ended up at UF, and now I work for the foundation for youth advancement. So I do training and development for them. So I'm the director of training and development for UF advancement.
And what are you training and developing? Is this leadership development?
So it's everything from onboarding to continuing education to leadership.
Okay.
Within just our little bubble of fundraising. So we're the fundraising arm of the University of Florida. We have about 350 employees, and about 150 of those are frontline fundraisers raising money.
So are these I'm an alum from UF, the people that are reaching out to
those
me?
Annoying people that are reaching out to you, sending you emails.
Lots of mail as well.
Yes, that's us. So worked there for about 5 years now doing training and development. So my passion lies in leadership training. Originally, my first foray into that was with Outward Bound. So I was an Outward Bound instructor here in the Florida Land Program, leading adjudicated youth through the brackish rivers of Florida. And it really sparked in me a real interest in kind of cohort leadership training. And I didn't realize what I'm doing now sort of ties back to that until just very recently. And understanding that connection, cohort building, and team building is really it's really a need that's within our organization, but I think organizations all around, small startups to corporate levels. There's this maybe there's this reaction when someone hears the word team building that I'm going to have to talk about my feelings and I have to be touchy-feely with other people.
Or do a rope line or whatever.
Or do something dangerous and scary. And there's all different kinds of levels of that in it. And that's what I'm trying to introduce with my work at the foundation, but also I'm beginning to expand that too and want to introduce that to other opportunities that might exist here in Gainesville as well. So,
are you speaking to that?
I am speaking.
And what is your topic? Something about this then?
It is sort of. It's called Flipping the Script, and it's your story in 6 words.
Okay, I did hear about this.
Yeah, so stories we tell about ourselves, and stories we tell a lot of times that are exciting and fun and funny, or maybe slightly tragic. Those things that are the worst camping trip I ever had, or the music festival, or road trip, or something like that. and thinking about how you tell the ending of that story. How does that end? And maybe flipping that ending and telling it in a positive light. What was the silver lining? What was the things that you learned from that?
Interesting.
And then taking that and thinking about it yourself and the story you tell about yourself to yourself and sometimes to other people. A lot of times it's fear of failure. I'm not worthy. I'm unloved, unlovable. And so some of those things that we talk about, and I'll share a little story of myself in the talk too. My fear of failure and then how I flipped that as well.
So interesting, because my last discussion with Jillian, that was here, this is exactly what we were talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, about this fear of failure. There seems to be an interesting thread through all of the people that I'm talking about, that self-awareness, social impact, international. There's a lot of international discussion, and Gainesville, of course, and how Gainesville. Do you think that this event attracts a certain type of people that would have those sorts of themes, or do you just think that's Gainesville?
I don't know. This event itself, actually, this is my first time attending.
Okay.
So
How did you hear about
I'm learning about it. I heard about it through InfoTech, through Tara Blythe.
Yeah.
And
We were just talking about her as well.
Yeah, and then I met Tammy and Tamarin, and so and then we started talking, and I have, like I said, I'm trying to expand my work in the community around this and what my skill set is. And another thing that I'm involved with in Gainesville is Awesome Gainesville, and it's part of a larger. It's called the Awesome Foundation. It's not a foundation at all. Actually, it's just a loose configuration of people in different cities around the world that come together to give $100 of their money quarterly in a group of 10 people, and that makes $1,000 grant to give to an awesome idea in the community. And so we founded that about 3 years ago, and
I love that. And
been giving money, no strings attached, to an awesome idea. So.
Yeah. I use that word a lot too, so I like that.
Yeah, and
awesome.
we end up
awesome.
using it all the time in our meetings. So
awesome.
Yeah, totally awesome.
The idea of what you're presenting today and how that threads into your work in leadership development, is there any connection there? I mean, is this something that you've been thinking about through that work, or is this something that you've been thinking about separately?
Absolutely, it's part of, I think, the whole experiential education framework that I have been working in and trying to expand more into. But if you are telling a story about yourself that's negative, something around failure, let's say, it's only going to manifest itself over time, right? And until you begin to tell yourself that I'm a facilitator, I am a musician, I am an artist, I am whatever it is that you want to become, until you own that and you begin to see that you can become that, your words, the stories that you tell yourself do manifest into something. I think that's paramount to leadership.
Yes.
Right. If you can manifest that and do that, you can show that to other people. It's a key component of it. And in fundraising, we ask people to tell stories, and we try and elicit stories from other people in order to understand what it is that they're passionate about. So it's a direct thing that we work with in fundraising, because it's all about relationship development. It's all about the relationship that you have with somebody. So if your relationship with yourself is negative, it's going to be really difficult to have a relationship with somebody else.
What does just with, not switching gears, but the foundation itself, is that like a typical foundation in that they're looking for opportunities to support, or is it all supporting the University of Florida?
Supporting the University of the mission of University of Florida. So,
so new programs or nothing specific?
Scholarships, faculty endowments, programs, um, capital projects, buildings, everything within the University of Florida, and they're embedded in different colleges across the university. So engineering, law, arts, they all have their own fundraisers that are trying to find those, are connecting with those alums
Mhm.
and those who have affinity for the University of Florida,
Okay.
our Gators,
Yeah.
in which they would like to contribute to this or that.
Got it. Got it. Very cool. Are you playing music still?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you play just for yourself? Do you play on stage?
Yes, so part of flipping my script and facing my fear was I played in bands and sort of been the support in the background,
Yeah.
playing in other people's bands, and started my own band. But the only way I was able to do it was actually put on like a superhero costume. So I
Okay.
wore a bear outfit and continue to do that. It's called Bears and Lions, and we're a kids band, so it's a family band. It's like
Okay.
music for kids that doesn't suck, like it's that parents like.
Okay.
We call it cage-free, age-free music,
Okay.
and that was sort of how I was able to approach it. I was able to write my own songs and sing and get in front of people and say, "Hey,
Write your own
here's my
songs
stuff.
even. Okay.
Here's my stuff." And since then, I'm taken off that costume because the story I was telling myself was that I was a failed musician.
Mm.
It was sort of funny to me. It was like, oh, this is what happens when you're a failed musician and you have kids. You start a kids band, right? And since then, I'm actually right now recording my own music. That's been probably 20 years in the making, and it'll be no costume.
Awesome.
And
Now, do you sing as well?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And will you do this? You're going to have to do it in public as well, then, I'm assuming.
Eventually, I think that's the culmination. Yeah, that in order to fulfill this and really break free of the fear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the name of
absolutely.
the album? Does it have a name yet?
There's no name of the album yet, but the project's called Sasquamish. So it's like Sasquatch with my last name.
Yeah. But no
costume.
costumes.
I'm not going
Awesome.
to put it on.
Well, I think we are at the end of the hour here, so I am going to end this broadcast. But thank you. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
That was awesome. So many interesting